All right. Hey there, students. AP Euro. Looking forward to our review tonight. We are getting very close to the exam. In fact, we've got 2 weeks, exactly 2 weeks until the AP Euro exam. So our Fiveable broadcasts are shifting into review mode. Now, I want to say from the get-go that if you have not yet subscribed to Fiveable Plus, you definitely want to think about that, because not only will you have access to all of our previous streams, to the full archive for this year for all subjects, not just AP Euro, all subjects offered by Fiveable, but you will also be able to get into some Cram sessions that we're offering. So you want to make sure to get on that, okay? So go to fiveable.me, look into Fiveable Plus. Now, if you have already gotten Fiveable Plus, if you've already bought it, or your teacher has gotten you Fiveable Plus, then you're good, okay? But you want to make sure that you're looking into that, because as we get closer to the exams, some of the sessions here are going to actually be for members only. So we've got a big group here tonight, and I'm really excited about that. And wow, okay, so we've got all kinds of questions here from all kinds of people. All right, so looking through this, whoop, 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 whoop. All right, okay, so remember, ladies and gentlemen, go ahead and go in there and upvote questions. Now, the War of the Three Henrys. Okay, so let's go ahead and start going over this. A lot of people want to hear about the War of the Three Henrys. Okay, so this was part of the French Wars of Religion. Now, in a lot of cases, I'm going to try to simplify this stuff for you. Okay, because there's nothing on the AP Euro exam that's going to make you know all of the intricacies of the War of the Three Henrys, okay? Because to tell you the truth, without looking it up, I don't know who 2 of the Henrys are. I know that one of the Henrys is Henry of Navarre, who is later going to become Henry IV of France. Now, what we need to focus on is, why is Henry of Navarre so important, okay? So Henry of Navarre is so important because he was a Protestant leader, okay? So he's somebody who's a Protestant leader, and as far as that goes, he is a Huguenot. Now, the Huguenots, these are French Calvinists, okay, during the French Wars of Religion. So really, it's not so much the War of the Three Henrys as to know the general premise of the French Wars of Religion. And so when we're looking into that, you have the conflict between the Catholic faction, which is, of course, you've got Catherine de' Medici and her various sons that are on the throne, and then the Protestants, the Huguenots, led by Henry of Navarre. Now, at the end of this conflict, which included the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, in which Catholics killed thousands of Protestants. So what you're looking at here is, at the end of this, Henry of Navarre becomes Henry IV of France. And Henry of Navarre was a politique, or it's spelled politicue, okay? Politicue, Politiquue. One of my students said one time politicue, and it kind of stuck. So politique, this is someone who considers matters of state more important than matters of religion. So when Henry of Navarre won this War of the Three Henrys, or whatever you'd call it, that he decided to convert to Catholicism. He allegedly said, Paris is worth a mass. So if I can be the king of France, then I will convert to the French religion. And so as far as that goes, the Huguenots were a let's see, too fast for you to write down. Well, I've got a video on this as well. Okay, so as far as that goes, that this is Henry of Navarre ends up on the throne as Henry IV of France, and so as such, now he also afterwards he issues what's known as the Edict of Nantes. Okay, the Edict of Nantes, which is a declaration by Henry IV, which allowed for religious toleration in certain cities. So the legacy of the French Wars of Religion, the result of that was Henry IV, the politique, becoming the king of France and issuing the Edict of Nantes, which granted religious toleration to French subjects in certain cities. So allowed the Huguenot religion, this French Calvinist religion, to be openly practiced. All right, so that's what you're looking at there. Now, of course, we also want to note that the Edict of Nantes, yes, exactly, Hamza, or whatever, it's a written test, right? But exactly. So as far as that goes, that Louis XIV did revoke the Edict of Nantes in what's known as the Edict of Fontainebleau, which I probably slaughtered, but again, a written test. A lot of times I just say Fontainebleau. All right, so religious toleration, but Louis, remember how many kings? How many laws? How many faiths? Can anybody remember that? We want to make sure when you're hearing Louis XIV, how many kings? How many laws? How many faiths? Come on, I want to see comments. I want to see comments. How many? Come on, how many? How many? Let me go ahead and I'm going to take a poll here. Okay, let's do a poll. Okay, so how many kings? How many laws? How many faiths? Okay, and let's say let's go ahead and put a few numbers here. All right, good. I see a lot of correct answers. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and put up to 5. Okay, so let's go ahead. Come on. How many kings, how many laws, how many faiths are, I tell you, y'all are about to all make 5s on this exam. Never learned that, but okay, well, I'm glad you've got it now. Okay, that's what matters, is that you've got it now, and that is awesome. You're all awesome people, and I am so happy to be here and to be a part of this. All right, so that is just great. Okay, I'm so happy. 1-1. Okay, very good. So we've got like almost everybody. Okay, so really, actually, oh my goodness, somebody just said 5, but almost everybody. Okay, excellent. So 1 king, 1 law, 1 faith. So Louis XIV, in the age of absolutism, he revoked the Edict of Nantes. So as far as that goes, it's not so much about knowing the intricacies of the War of the Three Henries, but it's about understanding the significance of the French Wars of Religion, which, of course, remember, also puts the French in a position where they're actually used to, by the time the 30 Years' War breaks out, they've already had a war about religion. And so the French end up joining the Protestants in the 30 Years' War, which that is a very significant event. All right, so as far as that, why is the 100 Years' War important? Tejas, drum roll, everybody. All right, why is the 100 Years' War important? It's important for a number of reasons, but it's not important for the AP Euro exam. Now, we typically will start the year talking about the 100 Years' War to establish context. The 100 Years' War was concluded before 1450, and so there's never going to be a specific question about the 100 Years' War on the AP Euro exam. There are a couple of exceptions, like, Petrarch and a few other things that are going to be beforehand, but you kind of need those. The 100 Years' War is not going to be on your exam. All right. What are some important texts that we need to know? Now, as far as that goes, that is a very broad question. Now, I would, if we're thinking about the Renaissance, for example, I'll answer this question for the Renaissance. And so as far as the Renaissance, I would say that you've got a few things. You want to know that Petrarch was the father of humanism, wrote several texts, but was better known for the purposes of this exam for saving text by Cicero and other authors. Now, as far as, I would say that Pico della Mirandola's oration on the dignity of man, that is an important one, because that's articulating this humanist philosophy and an exalted view of human nature, okay? And that's something that I think is very important, often referred to as the manifesto of the Renaissance. Then there would be, you've got the false donation of Constantine, Lorenzo Valla, who is using textual criticism, or what we might call philology. I'm going to put this word here, Philology, that Lorenzo Valla, he uses this basically textual criticism to show that this donation of Constantine, this document that said that the Pope, actually gave, Constantine actually gave the Pope the right to rule central Italy. And Lorenzo Valla proved that this was a forgery. And yes, Jillian, as you said, when we go to civic humanism, there are 2 authors that we'd want to know there. You've got Machiavelli and Castiglione. I've got videos on both of them. Machiavelli, most famous for writing The Prince. Castiglione, the most famous for writing the Book of the Courtier. Now, civic humanism, okay, civic humanism, this is where what you're trying to do here. Okay, civic humanism is about making someone a better leader. So using these classical studies to become a better leader. And so with Machiavelli, it's about being the prince. For the Book of the Courtier, this is how to serve a prince, to how to be a trusted advisor in the prince's court. Which, if any of y'all watch Game of Thrones, let me see how many people are familiar with Game of Thrones here. Okay, so let's see. Do you watch Game of Thrones? All right. Yes and not yet. Okay. Not yet. All right. So yes and not yet. Let me go ahead and put that on there. All right. Do you watch Game of Thrones? Let's see how many people watch Game of Thrones. Okay, not really a big thing. But if you did watch Game of Thrones, what you would see is a lot of times it's the advisors that really have a lot of sway. So if you think about the Book of the Courtier, it's not that the prince necessarily makes all their own decisions. That typically a prince is going to make decisions based on what their advisors say. So basically, how do you become the prince's trusted advisor and truly wield power? Okay, we're pressing F to pay respects here. Okay, so as far as that goes, whether you watch Game of Thrones or not, just understand that. All right. So as far as that's concerned, what we want to focus on now are the Northern Humanists. Okay, the Northern Humanists, which were Thomas More and Erasmus. The two of them were BFFs. Now, Northern Humanism. What we want to notice here, and I've got a video on this, is that Northern Humanism focuses less on how the individual can be a good, how the individual can be a good leader and advance themselves, and more on the idea of, how can we improve society? And specifically, how can we improve society based on Christian principles? And so now the thing is that that the Renaissance is not the Italian Renaissance is not necessarily like unchristian, right? But it's not as Christian as the Northern Renaissance. And so Erasmus, The Praise of Folly. Now note that all of these authors are using classical texts, okay? All of these authors are using classical texts for their inspiration. Just like, so Erasmus is looking at the Bible. When you think about it, remember that these literary sources, when we talk about classical literature, Greek, Roman, and biblical literature. And so with Erasmus, he's looking at the Bible, at the New Testament, and he's like, look, in this classical text, the apostles are poor. And then I look at the bishops who consider themselves to be successors of the apostles, and these people are rich. Okay, so as far as that goes, why is it if the apostles in the Bible are poor, why is it that the bishops right now, who claim to be successors of the apostles, why is it that they're rich? And so in The Praise of Folly, Erasmus criticizes the Catholic Church, but he does so as a devout Catholic. Okay, so that's what's important to note about, for example, when we think about Martin Luther. Now, Martin Luther's problem, the reason why Martin Luther gets proclaimed as a heretic, is that Martin Luther was criticizing the church's doctrines and as well as their practice, whereas Erasmus never criticized the Catholic Church's doctrines, only criticized church practices. And so as far as that goes, now then you've got Sir St. Thomas More, who wrote Utopia. Now, as far as his classical inspiration, Sir St. Thomas More, when he wrote Utopia, he is writing, based on kind of the model of Plato's Republic, where Plato, the ancient Greek writer, wrote about the ideal state. Okay, so wrote about the ideal state. And so Thomas More is trying to think about the perfect society. And this is a society where people are less individualistic, less focused on money. They're more focused on communal living and sharing and scholarship and all of that kind of stuff. All right, so as far as that goes, those are some texts that you would need to know for the Renaissance. All right, so how influential was the Peace of Augsburg? Now, the Peace of Augsburg was a settlement during the Reformation in the Holy Roman Empire because there were wars that were fought. but in the Holy Roman Empire between Lutherans and Catholics. Now, the Peace of Augsburg puts out this doctrine: whoever reigns, his religion. Okay, so which there's like a cuius regno, eius religio. It's a written test. Okay, but basically, whoever reigns, his religion. And I think that this is certainly very influential, because it basically binds the people in an area with the prince of the area. So, for example, now you have some exceptions, such as Henry IV of France. Henry IV of France, who allowed religious toleration, but in most cases, whether it's Louis XIV of France, Philip II of Spain, Henry VIII of England, whatever religion the ruler decides, that is going to be the religion of the people. Okay, whatever religion is decided by the ruler. And so that's going to be fairly important when you think about that. All right, so with that, I would say it was fairly thing there. So the War of the Roses, okay, we want to put this into the context of the new monarchs. Okay, so the new monarchs, these are kind of proto-absolutists. They're not absolutists, but they are centralizing authority. Okay, so what they're doing is they're centralizing authority, and they're consolidating power in the monarchy. Now, the most prevalent new monarchs are going to be Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain, and then Henry VII of England. Now, what you see, Henry VII wins the final battles of the wars of the Battle of the Wars of the Roses, and so Henry VII starts so you really don't need to know the intricacies of the Wars of the Roses. Okay, so those are basically wars between these different dynasties, and what Henry VII does is he centralizes administration and tax collection and tries to strengthen the monarchy, and is largely successful in strengthening the monarchy. And so that's what you need to know from there, is that Henry VII is representative of this trend toward the new monarchies, where the monarch is consolidating power at the center. Okay. All right. What were the causes of the Protestant Reformation? Okay, the causes of the Protestant Reformation. Now, as far as that goes, there are several internal factors within the Catholic Church. Now, I've actually got a video on this, but let's go ahead and just talk. I've got a video on just about all this stuff, really, but let's go ahead and talk about it. Okay, so the causes of the Protestant Reformation. Now, first of all, there are various corrupt practices, such as absenteeism. Where you and then where basically the bishops aren't showing up. A lot of times the bishops have purchased offices. Simony. Okay, simony. It goes back to this story where this guy named Simon the magician tried to purchase. He wanted to know, Saint Peter, how are you doing all these cool miracles? I'd like to learn from you. I'll pay you. And so that was something Peter's like, get away from me. All right. And so, but the thing is, the Catholic Church at this time was openly selling offices, simony. So if you wanted to be the bishop of this, you were expected to pay the Pope for that position. And so that's part of the reason why you had Johann Tetzel selling indulgences, because it was actually that one of these bishops, who was actually bishop of two places, I believe, that he was having to raise money so that he could send it to the Pope to pay for his bishopric. Okay, so you had this the sale of offices, of course, the sale of indulgences, but that was feeding off the sale of offices. And then another factor is when you think about the Bible being written in Latin. Now, when St. Jerome translated the Bible into Latin, it was called the Latin Vulgate. Okay, the Latin Vulgate, which, of course, when we think about vulgar language, okay, when we think about vulgar language, that is the language of the common people. Okay, so it's like whatever the common people's language are. Because when we think about when somebody says don't use vulgar language, it's like don't use language that is classless. Okay, use language that reflects class. And So the Latin Vulgate was actually translated into Latin so that people could understand it. This was the language that people spoke. And then 1,000 years later, people aren't speaking Latin anymore. And so with that, people aren't speaking Latin. And so therefore, the situation there is that people can't understand it. The Mass is in Latin. People can't understand that either. And so Martin Luther, that was one of his things, that the Bible should be translated into the vernacular. The services of the church should be in the vernacular. All right. And so those are a few of the causes of the Protestant Reformation. Now, of course, also you've got Henry VIII, who had some dynastic issues and wanted to get a divorce. And basically, when you look at Henry VIII, it's more of a secession, really, than a reformation. All right. And as far as that goes, let me just note here that the Great Schism, when you think about the now the Great Schism, of course, is the divide between East and West, and then there's also the schism between the Catholic Church in the late Middle Ages. That's really not all of that's taking place before 1450. So that's another thing that you probably see in the first chapter of your textbook. But just like the 100 Years' War, you're really establishing context for AP Euro more than anything else. All right. Could we talk about the main differences between the Northern and Italian Renaissances? I sure can. Okay. Now, both Renaissances, okay, the entire Renaissance is, of course, inspired by classical texts and inspired by Christianity to a certain extent. It's really about integrating Christianity with this classical culture. And so, as far as that goes, but the Italian Renaissance, by comparison, was more individualistic and secular. Now, if we're looking at evidence to support our argument, we would look at Machiavelli, we would look at Castiglione, where the Italians are writing things aimed at people who are seeking to advance themselves in their positions of leadership. Whereas the Northern Renaissance was more focused on social reform from a Christian perspective. Okay, so that would be the main difference. And of course, that is illustrated by Thomas More's Utopia, by Erasmus's The Praise of Folly. And remember that what ties them together is the influence of classical texts, that they're all engaged in humanist studies, whether it's Machiavelli, Castiglione, or Thomas More and Erasmus. All of them are inspired by these classical texts, by these works of Greek, Roman, biblical literature. And so, quick, brief run. Sarah, why have you forsaken me? All right, not even going to go there. Okay, so as far as that goes, already have gone over the new monarchs in the question about the Wars of the Roses. Remember that this is a centralizing thing that's going on. This is before the age of absolutism. And the monarchs are centralizing authority. Your best examples being Henry VII in England, and Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain. Okay, those are going to be your best examples of that. All right, so going with that. Okay, so Angelin, this is a common question. Was Erasmus against the Catholic Church or not? Okay, so as far as that goes, that we want to note here that Erasmus was a devout Catholic. Now, there is a difference between people who are criticizing some of the church's practices from within, which that's what Erasmus was doing. Erasmus took no issue with the doctrines, the teachings of the church. And so that's what makes Erasmus a devout Catholic. Also, Erasmus had a very Catholic view of free will. Erasmus, as a Christian humanist, was a big free will advocate. Now, Luther reached out to Erasmus. Luther was thinking, hey, Erasmus might be somebody that would be an ally for me because Erasmus has criticized the church. And Erasmus is like, no. I'm not like criticizing the church in the sense that I don't agree with the doctrines, that I am, I'm not criticizing the Catholic Church for that reason. I'm just saying that I disagree with some of the practices of the Catholic Church. And so he also had a very heated debate with Luther on the nature of free will. Whoa, am I getting Lancy kids at Coral Gables. Oh my goodness, Chloe, thank you so much. So Lancy sent some, I tell you, that is all the Lancy kids. Like, I tell you, I am a Lancy kid myself, okay? So all of you Lancy kids, want you to know that I love your teacher. I mean, that is so nice of her to send people over here, and that just warms my heart, really. And so yes, thank you so much. All right, but yes, so glad to see Lancy's kids, and exactly, Antoine, exactly. And the thing is, I'm Miss Lancy's daughter is graduated from college, so I'm taking a year off from my Miami review this year, but looking forward to coming back next year when a lot of y'all are in APUSH. Okay, but yes, I am such a big fan of Miss Lancy, and so great for her to send people over here. Yeah, you are famous. You've got a great team. I mean, you've really got like one of the highest profile teachers in this whole AP Euro operation. So y'all are a very lucky bunch of kids. Okay, now, Chloe, what in the devil? Like, I mean, if you want to do that, then like, okay, like y'all don't really have an idea of what this is. Okay, that as far as that goes, if you want, so I mean, it's just this kind of format is much more suited for answering questions. Okay, I mean, you can make a timeline for yourself. So that's one of those things. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that, and we're just going to kind of keep going. All right. So as far as that goes, please review. Okay. I've already hit the new monarchs pretty hard. So I'm not going to do any more with the new monarchs. Now, as far as that goes, let's see. All right, let's see if we're now the Napoleonic Code is well, of course, that is before 1815. Okay, now I actually was in Paris last week for a bit and got to see some cool monuments, especially from like the Napoleonic era, and I thought that was pretty awesome. Like, I love me some Napoleon. Actually, got to see the statue of Marshal Ney, who was one of Napoleon's right-hand men, one of his lieutenant generals. But as far as that goes, that the Napoleonic Code. Now, Louis XIV said one king, one law, one faith. And I think Louis did a pretty good job of the one king and one faith things, but Louis never really got around fully to the one law, okay? That before the French Revolution, before Napoleon, France had never really had a centralized system of laws, that there were all kinds of different local laws. So if you were in this part of France, the law says this. If you were in that part of France, the law said that. And so what happened with Napoleon is Napoleon, with the Napoleonic Code, gave France its first code of laws that applied to the entire French nation. And remember, a lot of times people are asking, like, why would the French tolerate a dictator? Like, wasn't the French Revolution about like freedom, democracy, representative government, or whatever? But really, when it comes down to it, the French Revolution was not just about liberalism, but it was also about nationalism. Okay, so the French Revolution was also about nationalism, and so that is very, very important to note when we're talking about that Napoleon is turning France really into a nation, and that is one of the biggest, like, long-lasting consequences of the French Revolution. And so the Napoleonic Code makes clear that France now is going to be a nation rather than just a collection of, kind of a hodgepodge sort of thing there. Okay, so as far as that is concerned, let's go ahead. So we've got that. So one law for all of France. Now, another thing that we want to make clear here excuse me, it's got a cough that's hanging with me. A lot of people note that basically the Napoleonic Code was, it did have some like conservative kind of elements here. Okay, so as far as the Napoleonic Code, there were some things like during the Reign of Terror, like women were granted the ability to ask for a divorce on the same grounds as men. Napoleon rolled that back a bit and made it very difficult for a woman to sue for divorce. Basically, the man had to like bring his mistress into the house and like embarrass her that way. All right. So as far as that goes, can I go over the English Civil War? Now, certainly, and that actually could be something that we would talk about quite a bit. Now, Ellen, or not Ellen, but let's see, this is Katrine. I'm going to go ahead and note here: the 7 Years' War is not a topic. It's not a major topic on this exam. Now, it's something that could be used as an illustrative example if you're familiar with it. But this particular war is much more important on the AP US history exam, where it's actually kind of the first event leading to the American Revolution. It is not so important for the AP Euro exam. Now, it could be used, again, it could be used as an illustrative example, but there's nothing that, there's no reason that like somebody would need to know a lot about the 7 Years' War in order to make a 5 on the exam, because a lot of this is actually going on outside of Europe. So I would just say not a major war in the sense of what we would need to know there. All right. So as far as that goes, let's see. So what is the difference? Okay, so Isabella, the difference between an absolute monarchy and a constitutional monarchy. Now, what does a constitution do? What is a constitution? A constitution limits government. So when we think about the United States Constitution, that places limitations on the government. There are certain powers that the government has, and the government is not allowed to exceed those powers. Now, a constitutional monarchy works similarly. Now, what do they have in common? They have in common that they are monarchies, that there is a king or a queen at the top of the government. Now, the thing is in an absolute monarchy, Louis never called the Estates General or any kind of representative body. Louis was able to tax by decree. He was able to say that I am taxing right now. Okay, that's what I'm doing here. And so as far as that goes, that Louis is able to rule absolutely. When Louis said, I am the state, there was nobody that he answered to, and there was no way to put a limit on his powers. Whereas when you look at the British system, okay, a constitutional monarchy, it says that the monarch has certain powers. Now, especially after the Glorious Revolution, that the monarch has these powers and cannot exceed them. So basically, the British monarch had to share power with the parliament, and only the parliament had the power to tax. Okay, so that is the big thing there, that parliament had the power to tax. And, other than that, the monarch did not have any kind of unilateral taxing power. So that's something that I think is going to be an important factor there, is the power of the monarch limited by law? Okay, so any kind of constitutionalism, the Dutch Republic also is an example of constitutionalism, because they were governed largely by representative bodies. Now, sometimes they had a stadtholder, but this wasn't something that they had all the time. Okay, so we've got that. All right, so going with this, let's take a quick look. Okay, so go. All right. So when it comes down to it, so let's see. Can I go over the? All right. All right. Now, the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, those of you who want to ask like disrespectful questions that like you don't like, you're asking for a different format than what I'm presenting here. Like, I mean, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's a hostile question. I mean, this is obvious. It's very obvious. It's set up as a Q&A here. So it's like, that's what it is. If that's not what you're looking for, then, I mean, there are other places you can go. All right. So as far as that goes, it's just kind of frustrating to see, to see hostile questions kind of put out here. So as far as that goes, let's go ahead and see what we've got here. Can I go over the English Civil War? Okay. All right. Okay. Oh gosh, that's another one, Angela. And that is that's a touchy subject for me. If y'all are trying to harass me with the questions, I'm just going to ignore you. I mean, if that's what you're doing, then I'm just going to ignore you from now on. Okay. And I may ignore the rest of your questions. Okay. I'm not here to be harassed. I'm here to answer questions. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and, ask questions that are actually being asked in good faith. So as far as that goes, yeah. All right. Anyway, not real happy with some of the hostile attempts that I'm seeing here. So as far as that goes, All right, let's take a look here. All right. So going into let's go into the English Civil War. All right. So as far as the English Civil War, we're going to go ahead and kind of start. Okay, with we were just talking about the idea of constitutionalism. Okay, so absolutism versus constitutionalism, and so going from there, that a lot of the continent, okay, a lot of the continent is basically trending toward absolute monarchy in the 17th century. Okay, so in the 17th century, and then the English at that time are really going to go in the opposite direction. Now, the other thing you're going to see here is that you're going to see that the English, okay, all right. So let's see here. Um, all right. Yeah, I'm really trying to like focus here, and there's just a lot of like irrelevant chatter, and I'm really like it's very like just imagine yourself in my position, and if the chat, like if you're in my position and the chat is basically like, how do we like derail him and how do we distract him? This is not leading to a better situation for those people who are here who are trying to review. So at a certain point, I'm probably going to start kicking people out of the chat if we're facing a situation where I'm looking at the chat and there's just a lot of irrelevant chatter, because that's just I'm really at a point right now where I'm just I've had just about enough. Okay, so let me go ahead and just try to get my bearings, because that's yeah. Let me just yeah. Let me go ahead and just try to get my bearings. But yeah, it's just there are attempts to deliberately like but anyway, let me just get a drink of water and I'll see if I can get my bearings from there. Mm. All right. Okay. So as far as let's go ahead and you know what, that is a good point. Let's see, can we ban user? Let's say. Yeah, I think that might actually be like a good idea. I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead. We'll go ahead and ban one there. All right. So let's see if that worked or not. Okay. So as far as that goes, the English Civil War. All right. So going at yes, that water. Okay. So basically, what we're looking at is a conflict between the monarch and the parliament. Okay, so who's got the right to tax, who's got the right to rule, and all of that kind of stuff. And the English Civil War is basically coming about because James the First. Now you got James the First and Charles the First before the English Civil War, and Charles the Second and James the Second. Okay, so that's going to be after the English Civil War. So you've kind of got like a mirror image there. And going toward the English Civil War, James the First was an absolutist, a believer in the divine right of kings. Okay, so as far as that goes, a believer in the divine right of kings, a believer in royal absolutism. Now, as far as that goes, we had seen before that the power of the monarchs was increasing. Like you think about the new monarchs, and everybody else is kind of, if you go to France or anywhere else, you're going to see that absolutism is coming about. But what happens here is that Parliament had always had the power to tax, going all the way back to like the 14th century, after the Magna Carta and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, so as far as that goes, the English Civil War, you get to Charles II, who was trying to rule personally. His father had told him, "You're a divine right monarch. You don't need Parliament's permission to tax or anything like that." And so then, that's basically the essence of the English Civil War. Not only that the monarch was trying to tax, with the ship money. You got to be very careful when you're pronouncing the ship money. All right. But as far as that goes, that Charles tried to take a tax that had only been applied to the coastal towns and cities, and he wanted to apply it everywhere. Okay, so as far as that goes, going over the, as far as that goes, the English Civil War is fought because of, then also religion. Okay, that James and Charles had a preference for what they call High Church Anglicanism, and so it was very much the Church of England was going in a more Catholic direction, really not altogether different from the Elizabethan settlement. The Elizabethan settlement was, we will have a Protestant Church of England, but it will retain a lot of different Catholic features. Okay. And so basically the Puritans, these Protestants, the Puritans and separatists, the English Calvinists, were largely upset with, with the English monarchy, and the English Civil War basically is going to, it's kind of a setting up the stage for the Glorious Revolution, which is going to happen, later. But yes, the Roundheads you had in the English Civil War, the Cavaliers and the Roundheads. The Cavaliers were the supporters of the monarchy. The Roundheads were the supporters of Parliament and Protestantism. All right. So as far as that goes, now I do have a lecture series on, James the First, Charles the First, Charles the Second, James the Second. So you want to make sure that you take a look at that, and I go through the Glorious Revolution and all of that. All right. So as far as that's going, let's see where we can find some other questions here. All right. Okay. Wow. We've got an interesting thing there. Hopefully that 30 Years War link was a link to my video. Oh, beautiful, beautiful. I tell you, did I just make a friend here? Do I have, like, oh, it's Angelin, of all people. Okay, so, but anyway, I was about to say, I thought I made a friend here. All right, but going with that, okay, the Counter-Reformation. Okay, so Maya, let's go ahead and go into the Counter-Reformation. And so as far as this, the main points of the Counter-Reformation, or often known as the Catholic Reformation, because what we want to think about, that when you counter, it's not just like against the Reformation, but there's also something, when people call it the Catholic Reformation, they're thinking in terms of not only is it resisting the Protestant Reformation, it is also, that the Catholic Church is actually doing something. Okay, so it's, it's basically, there are a few things here. Okay, so essentially, the thing to know about the Catholic Reformation is an affirmation of Catholic doctrine and a reformation of church practice. Okay, so so basically the affirmation of Catholic doctrine. Okay, the affirmation of Catholic doctrine is, now this person here, okay, so the affirmation of Catholic doctrine, there is not anything the Catholic Church is going to do when it comes to doctrine. And this kind of goes back to what I was talking about with Erasmus, that the church was actually open to some criticism about, about its practices. And that's what happens at the Council of Trent. That's where the Council of Trent's like, if anybody doesn't believe everything the Catholic Church teaches, let them be anathema. Okay, let them burn in hell. But at the same time, there are other things when it comes to the sale of indulgences. Let's not do that anymore. Let's found some seminaries. Okay, I've got a video on this topic as well. But let's found some seminaries. Let's make sure that priests are properly educated. Let's deal with some of the corruption in the church. And so the thing is, the Counter-Reformation does that. Now, also, we want to note the influence of Baroque art, which I've got a two-part video on Baroque art. And so the Counter-Reformation, which Bernini's Ecstasy of Saint Teresa. Okay, so Ecstasy. The Ecstasy of Saint Teresa. Okay, so let me go ahead and show you this. This is a Baroque sculpture by Bernini. Okay, so let me go ahead and let's see here. The Ecstasy of Saint Teresa. Okay, so let's take a quick look. Take a quick look. All right. Now, also there is, there is an increase in like Catholic spirituality. Okay, there's like a renewal of Catholic spirituality. Saint Teresa of Avila is a saint. Was a nun in the during the time of the Counter-Reformation, and you can see here that Saint Teresa, like one of the things here is that Luther, remember when he talked about the priesthood of all believers, he portrayed the Catholic Church as an organization that tries to stand between the believer and God as an intermediary. Whereas Saint Teresa is showing here that that actually what can happen here, okay, that basically the Catholic Church can promote a very vibrant faith, okay? And so with that, you can see here the sculpture showing Saint Teresa, which a lot of times you think like, oh, she's a nun, she's missing out on stuff. This sculpture here says she's missing out on nothing, okay? That the experience that she's able to have because of this closeness that she has with Jesus Christ, that she's like, look, I'm not an unmarried woman, I'm not an old maid, I am married to Jesus Christ. And you can see this the imagery with the arrow, and I don't have to necessarily explain to you what's kind of going on here. And so we see this very like erotic spirituality in this statue. And so that is part of the renewal of Catholic spirituality. Now, also, we want to focus on the Jesuits, okay? Ignatius of Loyola. Okay, is this admin Tom Ritchie saying some things? Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll kick the admin Tom Ritchie. All right, so we're going to have to go ahead. Okay, sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see what's going on there. But yes, the Jesuits, that was an order founded on Ignatius of Loyola. Okay, Ignatius of Loyola was the founder of the Jesuit order, which was largely, okay, the Jesuit order, it was largely basically to oppose the Protestants, okay? So to basically now a spiritual warfare, not like actual physical warfare, but through spiritual warfare. And the other thing, though, not just opposing Protestants, but there was also the element of that basically the Jesuits, there are all kinds of Jesuit colleges and universities. For example, there are at least 2 Loyola universities in the United States today. So the Jesuits are not only, fighting Protestantism on a spiritual level, but they are also founding universities and contributing to the greater education of priests. Now, remember that Queen Elizabeth, the first of England, she expelled the Jesuits from her country because as a Protestant ruler, she knew that there's no reason that the Jesuits are in her country other than to try to oppose the Reformation and reestablish Catholicism. Okay, so as far as that goes, let me go ahead and mark that question as answered. And thank you very much, Maya, for your question there. All right, and so as far as that, let's go ahead and bear it. Let's take a look at the scientific revolution. Okay. So as far as that goes, Barrett, the scientific revolution. Now, what I want to note here is the difference between somebody making a 3 and making a 5. Okay, that when it comes down to it, Galileo wasn't in trouble so much because he opposed the church. Okay, Galileo was in trouble because he had opposed the ancient authorities. Okay, so you think about this Renaissance culture. Okay, you think about this Renaissance culture that is focused on, I mean, during the Renaissance era, people thought like, look, the Greeks and the Romans were so much cooler than we are, and they represented the pinnacle of everything. Now, what's going on here is at the beginning of the scientific revolution, people still trusted ancient authorities. Aristotle said, if you drop a light object and you drop a heavy object, then the heavy object's going to hit the ground faster. That sounded logical. Aristotle said it. It was enough. And so then Ptolemy, if you want to say it that way, Ptolemy, the Roman Egyptian astronomer, he said, look, the earth is at the center of the universe, geocentrism. And Copernicus and Galileo are like, nuh-uh. And, of course, that's what gets them into trouble, is that they're disputing these ancient authorities. Now, there's also Galen, who was the medical guy, okay, that, the Roman doctor that was the biggest authority at that time. And so really what people are doing, what's getting them into trouble, is not necessarily just that they are, challenging the church, so to speak, but they're challenging these ancient authorities, and they are setting the stage for the Enlightenment. Okay, they're setting the stage for the Enlightenment, and with that, with setting the stage for the Enlightenment is where it's like, you know what, the Greeks and the Romans are cool, but we're cooler than they are. So Enlightenment, Enlightenment philosophers and Renaissance humanists, they all admired the Greeks and the Romans, but at the same time, the Enlightenment folks are like, hey, we've brought this to another level. So the scientific revolution is setting up the Enlightenment, which is a forward-looking movement. That the Renaissance is a backward-looking movement, whereas the Enlightenment is like, look, we're moving forward, and we've actually, the pinnacle of human existence is right here, right now, and it's only going to go up from here. That is the Enlightenment mentality. Whereas excuse me. Whereas we're looking at that now, the Enlightenment and the scientific revolution. I actually have a video on that. Okay, that the scientific revolution is kind of setting the stage for the Enlightenment. That the scientific revolution is really the people doing that, like Galileo and Copernicus and Francis Bacon. They're not really interested in reforming society. They're really just interested in science. And the Enlightenment is about, why don't we take this scientific way of thinking and apply it to society, and apply it to things like the study of religion and stuff like that, which a lot of these guys in the scientific revolution, they tended to be very conventional Christians, whereas you start to see later on during the Enlightenment that that's not necessarily something that that they're interested in there. So as far as that goes, let's go ahead and take a look here and see what we've got here. All right. Now, okay, Katrine, as far as that, or Katrina, if it's Katrine, I'm not sure. It's a written test, right? So as far as that goes, I think the most important thing that when we're writing is that we're making organized arguments, that we are putting things into categories, so that we're not just like in our pre-writing before an exam, you're not just thinking about, oh, let me write down Thomas More, if we're thinking about Northern humanism versus Italian humanism, oh, Thomas More, Erasmus, you want to think in terms of, let's organize the information and let's make sure that all the evidence that I'm using actually supports a point. On the DBQ, I think it's important to sort the documents into groups. Now, you don't get credit per se for grouping the documents, but you do get credit for making arguments. And you make arguments by stating your point. Every body paragraph should begin with a topic sentence that says what's going to happen. Like, basically, what am I arguing in this paragraph? And using the documents or whatever outside evidence you have to support that topic sentence. Okay, so I think the most important thing is when you're studying things in an organized manner, then you're getting things ready to make an argument-driven essay. Nicole, thank you so much. Check out Tom Ritchie's website. I think that's awesome. And also, I would say too that when Jillian's saying watch the clock, I would try to get used to writing an LEQ in 30 minutes or less. Now, unless you're writing a full credit LEQ, there's no reason why you can't write like an LEQ that would get a 3 or a 4, which is above average. Okay, you need to get a 3 to be above average on the LEQ. And there's no reason you can't do that in like 15, 20 minutes, if that. And so, but if you're trying to write like a 6, I would make sure, because the DBQ and the LEQ appear on the exam together, I would get used to writing the LEQ in 30 minutes or less, because that makes sure that if your DBQ runs over a little bit, then you're going to be okay. All right. So as far as that goes, then the SAQs. Be sure that you're offering a piece of specific evidence on the SAQs. Okay, so that you're offering a piece of specific evidence, and from there, you want to, from there, you've got, you say something. Now, the SAQs, it's basically, from what SAQ readers have told me, people tend to get things wrong because they haven't, they get things wrong because they haven't, they didn't know the material. So make sure, tell them what you know. All right. So as far as that goes, yes, the DBQ counts for 25% of your exam score, whereas the LEQ is 15% of your exam score. So yes, the DBQ is the single most important thing here. No, the multiple choice is 55 questions, but it's 40% of the exam. And so the DBQ, that one essay, is going to count for 25% of your exam score. So the DBQ and the LEQ together are 40%, but the DBQ is the lion's share of that 40%. 20% for the 3 short answers, and then 40% for the multiple choice. So 40, 20, 40. Oh, excuse me. There are 4 SAQs that are going to be presented to you. You have to do the first 2, and then you will have a choice between the last 2. So you have 2 that are required, and then you have a choice of 2. All right. So you'll actually write 3 SAQs. Now, remember, ladies and gentlemen, that we want to, you want to make sure that you have access to the Cram sessions that are going to come out. So we want to make sure that, if you haven't checked into Fiveable Plus, that you look into that. Now, that also allows you right now, if you're wanting to go back and look at, some of y'all are asking some specific questions here, and like, maybe I should go back and go check out the one on the age of absolutism. So Fiveable Plus would be a great investment. And remember, when we get to the week of the exam, Fiveable Plus is actually going to cost more than it does now. Okay, so go to fiveable.me and then go look from there. Okay, so as far as that goes, ladies and gentlemen, want to okay, so as far as that, okay, so which we need to, some of these folks, I'm having to moderate my own chat, which is not the most convenient thing in the world, but as far as that goes, yeah, the Cram sessions that are going to take place right before the exam are only for Fiveable Plus members. Okay, so you want to make sure that you have a membership. So yes, if you want to be in the Cram sessions, those are going to be members only. So if your teacher's already gotten you Fiveable, then you're fine. Okay, so if you've bought Fiveable personally, or your teacher has, your teacher subscribed to Fiveable Plus in the fall when that was offered to teachers, then you're good. Okay, then you're good. Right now, I'm not sure what exactly the price is, but you know what? Let me just go to fiveable.me and let's take a look there. Okay, so if you go to fiveable.me, then you can go to join Fiveable Plus. All right. And that is going to, that's going to be here. Let's see. Fiveable Plus right now is $35. Okay, so right now $35, and that's got several things here. And also, if you're taking any other exams this year, that'll count for that. Okay, so as far as that goes, that is something. Okay, so we need to figure that. We'll figure out how to better moderate the chat in the future there. All right, so with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank y'all so much for coming. And I will be here. I believe we have one more free broadcast next week, so we'll be in touch for that. All right, so with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I sure do know Miss Feast. Say hello to her. Yes, I actually met her in person, did a session last year. All right, so as far as that goes, ladies and gentlemen, oh my goodness. Okay, so have a wonderful evening.